Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Blockchain Monday. For those who don't know me and who don't know our association, my name is Tom Hafferland. I'm working for the Hanseatic Blockchain Institute, and the Hanseatic Blockchain Institute uh, every week conducts these Blockchain Mondays, like the one we do right now with Anna. And every week we will have a different speaker here, and we will discuss and debate about another topic, how blockchain can be used to address uh, several problems. So we have the variety of blockchain applications here, and we will talk about whatever is very important right now. And you are very invited to join our sessions. If you want to keep updated for the Blockchain Monday, I would recommend to subscribe to the newsletter and follow us on LinkedIn. And yes, but without further talking, I would say we will come to Anna. Thank you, Anna, for being here. Tonight we will have a little bit of a Q&A session. So I warmly invite all of you to start asking your questions right ahead. We will have a Q&A function. You can see this in your Zoom tab. You can simply write your question there, and Anna and me, we're going to see this and going to integrate your questions in our talk about recruitment and just HR in Web3. But Anna, let's start with you first, maybe just to introduce a little bit. Could you tell us a little bit, who are you? I guess everyone knows you, but anyways, what are you doing? What is your mission also? Like, what is your purpose in Web3?
Okay, yeah, cool. So, hi everyone. Also, warm welcome from my side, and thanks for joining us today at 7 p.m. I mean, you could be watching the Barbie movie, as I mentioned in my post, or maybe having dinner or something, and it's really nice that you're joining us. By the way, before I start talking, there's a lot of flights going. Can you hear it? Okay,
Yeah, the
maybe I
sound
might
is
have to switch the room because I was just wondering. But okay, I'll try to close the window and hopefully that will be enough. Okay, so yeah, no, but besides
much
that, my
better,
name is
much
Anna.
better.
Okay, I hope it will stay like that. I don't know what's wrong today, lots of flights. So my name is Anna, and I've been with Michael Page for 12 years now, so a really long time. And I've been doing tech recruitment there, built up a large tech recruitment team for permanent recruitment in Germany, and we were 25 people in the end. So for Page, I mean, we're 10,000 people across the globe, but it's definitely one of the biggest teams out there. And yeah, pretty successful. And that was really cool. But 2.5 years ago, approximately, I fell in love with crypto, blockchain. You guys know it. I think we all fell down the rabbit hole, as we all say. And for me, it was just I bought some Bitcoin 2020 because my boyfriend then was like, hey, maybe we should buy a bit of Bitcoin. I was just like, yeah, okay, it's this random thing that always goes up and down, and you don't know what happens. And then, yeah, 6 months later, I saw the account and I was like, okay, maybe I should dig into that as an investor. And yeah, first it was just a hobby, then it became a passion. I mean, I started doing that during the bull run any free minute basically, and was telling people about tokens, coins, and the blockchain use cases, even though nobody asked back then, or maybe few people asked. And of course, the higher Bitcoin went, the more people started asking. But anyway, so it was still a passion. And then I talked to my managing director and asked if I can open a blockchain team because nobody anywhere at Page and none of our competitors from the big recruitment agencies was doing anything official with blockchain. I mean, I'm sure there have been placements around, but nothing, like nobody focused on it. And I felt it's like such a opportunity to be early because recruitment is usually reactive, and I thought, okay, that's a chance to actually be active and proactive and prepare for the need and the demand here, specifically because we have a supply and demand difference here. So yeah, luckily my managing director was positive, and I first made a pilot for Germany, but then we realized very early with a small team of blockchain natives that yeah, Germany is not enough. I mean, it's a hugely international market, and that's why we focus on now on the European level and also the global level. And basically, this team and me were the only ones officially at Page worldwide doing this, a bit of pioneers within corporate structures, and we focus on C-level recruitment in the blockchain industry. That's basically our focus, and leadership positions. It could occasionally also be a specialist role, but really the focus is leadership. Yeah, that's a bit of a long introduction. I'm sorry. I'm just for talking. Really, you
No,
have to interrupt me.
yeah. I mean, you perfectly you straight dived into the topic.
Or
I
maybe
found it
one
very
last
interesting.
thing to add.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention that because since March, I'm really 100% on blockchain because before that, I was still leading the tech team. But then I was a bit like in the situation of either continuing tech or doing blockchain. And I chose blockchain simply because it's really the high potential growth market despite the bear market. So we need some time really until it will go full force. But I mean, you've seen the news today, maybe with PayPal introducing the stablecoin. So there are still a lot of developments happening despite the bear market. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like that would be super interesting straight ahead, right? You said that you started actually creating the hub last year, and
And
which was
stealth.
still, yeah, and but you did both, right? You did the Web 2 and the Web 3 recruitment in the end. So from your knowledge, you can also compare both. But first of all, we are in the bear market right now. So who's looking for any C level? Is there enough? Is there enough work to do for you right now?
Yeah, definitely enough work. I think the issue for me is rather because we're operating in a small setting, because of course we will not, during a bear market and general markets questions that were there in the beginning of the year, will not overexpand and overinvest into something new. Like I can't just hire 10 people and we'll just, so I have limited resources. But still, there's a lot to do, making contacts, making intros, going to all these speaker opportunities, to all these events, to meet people, to meet the right people as well. And relationship building, I mean, recruitment is all about relationship building. I mean, I even remember my first big client on the Web2 side. Of course, I did some recruitments in Web2 before, but my really biggest client, I had to work for a year without a single recruitment for them. It was just networking, building relationships with different stakeholders in the same company. And after a year, the first recruitment came in, and then I think I recruited 20 people for them over the course of 5 years. So it's been really a good client and a good investment from my side in terms of time to focus on them. But this is definitely something, particularly on the C level, that is not happening overnight. It's like not like I go to an event and yeah, sometimes I mean it does happen that people have roles immediately and they're like, oh, I'm so happy I met you, Anna, and now let's hire our C level like combination of CFO, CEO, I don't know, like we look for everything. So that could happen. But the reality is more like that you build trust and you build a relationship, and the need has to be there. And of course, in the bear market, there is need, but it's limited. And as you asked in the beginning, who's hiring? There are some, I would say, there are many companies actually having problems with their runway because they might have gotten money 2 years ago, but now they feel the money is like it's very tight. And so from that side, I rather get candidates who are like, hey, in 5 months there will be no money left. I don't really see the opportunity here. I need to look elsewhere. So this is rather the movement of candidates away from them. And the big protocols, they are hiring, but very limited in general, because of course it's with caution right now. And there are some winners who received recently really good funding that are hiring. I mean, the SUI foundations, Stark is definitely an ecosystem that is hiring. Like anything ZK related is definitely up and coming, and like the flow of money, venture capital, like the money is flowing into Web3, but it's much limited compared to 2021 levels. So it's much less, but it's still going, and it's just, yeah, much more like to the point and very, very carefully, but still there are companies that are hiring. And so, yeah, so I would say look out for those winners or high potential, maybe future unicorns, and that could be definitely something. And in Web 2, I mean, there are these Web 3 roles in Web 2 corporations, like mine, for instance. They are hiring, but I would say they rather go very often with ambassadorships. So they let's say Salesforce, for instance, they have a big workforce, and they ask internally, hey, who's interested in Web3? And we will make an internal ambassadorship program. I think they had around 100 people, if I'm not mistaken, who were part of this ambassadorship. So who actually had different jobs, but who joined this promoting Web3 initiative across the globe and help their Web3 studio thrive and like be an internal connector. And I think some did it part-time, some, yeah, like most, I think, did it part-time to their real job. So this is rather the way that yeah, people do it in the Web 2 world. It's more like an internal
Mm.
system. Some are hiring externally, but definitely the internal one is what I see more often.
Yeah, we straight got a question from Paul, but you kind of answered this question already
Oh,
right now.
did I?
But anyway, so I will repeat it. Maybe you can take a point for this. So you said, I was struck by your statement that you mainly recruit C-level managing roles for Web3 companies. I was expecting more conceptual builder development focused roles. Can you give some insight on the companies you supported recruiting? What type of companies are those? Startups, mid-size, large
Mhm.
scale?
Yeah. So basically, the focus on C-level, as I said, it doesn't have to be C-level. It's not like I wouldn't do anything else, or a lead developer, for instance. Let's say somebody who's like the lead Rust developer of Solana, just to give an example. That would be definitely a role, like Rust lead developer at a like protocol level. That would definitely be a role because it's a thought leadership role. It's a very critical role for the company. I think what we just realized is that we're too small to tackle the whole market, so we need to focus on something. And it does definitely strategically make sense to focus on the decision makers at this stage because we do have a strong brand that we can use and like utilize to have these connections. And that's what I often see when I talk to leaders from, yeah, the companies that we all know. It's like they do know us from their previous careers and maybe in Web 2. And it's not like our brand is not there. It's really for them, they know us. So it's really good for us to connect with them. It's, I wouldn't say necessarily easy, but definitely easier than someone who has never worked with us before in Web 2 because they're just new and just in Web3 from the beginning. So yeah, and basically it's really the focus that we're just a very small team, and that's why we have to focus on something and decided, okay, C-level makes sense because if we expand in the future, then we can also do more of the technical roles, more of the marketeer roles, but we need a bigger team for that. And then all these leadership contacts will also be helpful because then they can introduce us to the hiring managers and we can expand on a larger scale. Exactly. And in terms of companies that we work with, I mean, the first months was really a lot of, let's say, analyzing the market, going to different kind of conferences to see, okay, where is the need actually, what kind of roles are needed, what kind of companies do need us. So we first focused a lot on really Web3 protocols, so the native ones, not the easy way of for us to go to our clients that we anyways have in Web 2 and ask if they need some Web 3, but was really to build street credibility in the Web 3 world to show that we're serious about the space and not just here because we smelled some easy money or something. And I think that was really the focus. So definitely some of the leading, like if you look at the top 50 or top 100, we definitely have a lot of contact with them. Not everyone, as I said, simply for time reasons, and there might be other preferences. Like not everybody's hiring with recruitment agency, or maybe they have somebody else already working or get help from venture capital. But we definitely have some contacts there, as well as potential startups. And this is also something I enjoy when you go through a venture capital, for instance, that introduces you to a startup that doesn't even have a website yet, because that's where I see definitely a contribution that I can make. It's not like you can go on their website and apply yourself, but it's really something new that we can bring in and where we can tell you what is good about it and ensure some trust. Because of course, if a company
Mhm.
doesn't have a website, maybe the first impression, apart from finding it, might be like, okay, yeah, what is there to know about them? Why are they in stealth mode, and so on. So it's a mixture of larger ones as well as up and coming startups. Um, yeah, and with Web 2, we also have our contacts, but as I mentioned, it's a lot of ambassadorships there. So we have more recruitments actually going with the protocols, or also with Web 2.5, which is definitely a big field, like hidden champions whom you might not have known. It's not the Solana or near, but it might be maybe something that is actually really hidden, but it might be something valuable that brings a lot of value to you. So I hope that answered the question. I think there's another one. Which technical stack is currently the most sought after in the Web3 environment? I think it depends a bit. I would say if you're a developer, Solidity, of course, is definitely an advantage still, and it's really, really good one to have. Rust as well, because Rust is definitely sought after, particularly in the Solana ecosystem, but also in different other ones. I personally think it could also be interesting to focus a bit on other tech stack. For instance, I mean, if you know the Starkware ecosystem, I'm a big fan of that technically, and they have the Cairo language, so that could be interesting if you want. Like, it has advantages and disadvantages with a niche because, of course, there are less opportunities for you simply in terms of numbers in Cairo than in Solidity or in Rust. But at the same time, those that look for Cairo developers, well, they also don't have that much of a choice. It's a rather new thing and definitely something that will have some demand, but more as a niche, I would say, at least for now. But just to give an example. No.
Could you maybe also elaborate a little bit, not only technical stacks, but what are other protocols generally looking for?
Well, that's very different. Like sometimes there are phases when I get free requests for marketing officers or sales officers. We had a high demand for that right before FTX, actually. So it was like almost all our roles were really like sales and marketing roles with a focus on blockchain experience. Like people have to be from the blockchain space, but it was really about still selling token launch preparations. After FTX, most of these roles definitely got canceled or maybe self-filled as well. And the technical roles, it was also challenging because, of course, the big tech, they had a lot of layoffs, and also Web3 itself had a lot of layoffs. So it was definitely a time when, there were more candidates on the market, and in general, like supply and demand was a bit out of balance. There was more supply than demand. But in the long run, we definitely need more candidates. So it's a short-term thing that we had no shortage of candidates. And in the long run, we definitely need more. And in terms of what I personally would say, marketing and sales is definitely something interesting because it's a tech industry and there are strong developers already in the space. But the main problem of blockchain being usability and user friendliness in many ways, and onboarding more people into it, opening the gateways. And this is definitely something that marketing is doing and sales. So these roles will be critical in the next months, or particularly after the halving, I would say. I mean, we all don't know. It's no like recruitment or position advice, but I do expect a lot more demand for marketing and sales professionals and leaders. Once people stop focusing on product development and really go more like, okay, we need to launch a token, we need to launch the product to bring it to the market. This will definitely be an interesting one. But if you're really now in the space, making your connections there now, I think you will have a bright future with that. But of course, development also. I mean, it's an industry that is never sleeping in a way, and technically advancing so fast, probably like much faster than the normal tech industry. Like I've been recruiting 10 years with my team for Java and SAP and infrastructure and cybersecurity. And of course, there are also developments and they are also happening fast, but you can't compare it to blockchain from my point of view. Like here it's, I don't know, like there it was maybe it was from year to year, from month to month, there were some developments, but here it's like weekly changes, and you have to keep up to date a lot.
Yeah, we received another question by Nabil. Hello, everyone. By the way, Nabil, if you want to use the chat if you talk to everyone, because the Q&A section is something that only Anna and me can see. Anyways, I will say hello, everyone. I would like to know where and how I can start an NFT project. Are there any points of contact in Germany or Hamburg where I can find like-minded individuals who are interested in starting an NFT project? The NFT involves coordinates and an image. I don't know where to begin.
Okay, first of all, congratulations on the idea and the wish to start something yourself. I think this is always very admirable and a really cool step. I think in Hamburg, because you specifically asked about Germany and Hamburg, let's start with Hamburg locally. Of course, Hanseatic Blockchain Institute. I mean, we once a month have live meetings, so maybe those could be interesting for you. It's not always around NFTs, but there are a lot of NFT people. So I think that could be interesting. If you need specific people, we also have someone really, really fond of NFTs in our like leadership board. It's Anna Graf. So if you follow her on LinkedIn and connect her, I think she's like our go-to person for NFTs. But in general, we have several experts on that also in the board. So Hanseatic Blockchain Institute is definitely a place for you to be. I think there's also our gallery friend, Uta, who is having an NFT gallery. So I think that could be interesting. So that for Hamburg. And also blockchains, of course, is an event. I'm not sure if you were there in June. We had it right now, but it will happen next year again. I think towards the end of the year, right, Tom? I'm not sure. But
September next year.
perfect. Yeah, so basically that's definitely, it's not NFT only, but it also involves NFTs. So I think these are starting points in Hamburg. Also, when it comes to Germany NFTs, I would definitely recommend getting in touch with Web3 Fund, because they are doing a lot really for the space, and they have this big conference that they organize at, yeah. Now I lost it. Tom, what's the name of
The
Vision? The
DMXco?
Web3 Yeah,
The
Mexico, exactly. Because at
DMXco
Web3 Vision
in
is their
Cologne.
conference in Cologne. It's in September this year, so maybe that could actually be a really interesting one. Also, Women DAO, also based in Hamburg, interesting project, also focusing a lot on NFTs and onboarding women and non-binaries into the space. So I hope these were interesting suggestions. God, I'm so sorry about the noise. I think, as I said, I don't know why
It's not that
the
bad.
lights. Not that bad or bad?
It's not that bad.
Okay.
We
Here's
can
like
understand
super.
you. Let me quickly use this for a short advertisement, as you said it already. So, in this month again, let me think. Wait, it's the 28th of August. Um, then we will meet up in person again. So just follow our newsletter or subscribe to our newsletter, and you will definitely always get to know when we meet up in person. And these are also the events where you will meet people from Hamburg. Exactly.
Yeah, I think we have another question from Jenny. Hi, Jenny. um, what about the big and very well-known corporates? Okay, sorry, Tom, you maybe want to read it out, right? Or is it?
I don't mind.
Okay, then I'm
Go
gonna
for
read
it.
it. And so, what about the big and very well-known corporates? Do you see them hiring people with existing blockchain expertise for their innovation hubs, or do you see more of them letting their own people develop in the field? Both. As I said, if I would have to bring a number, this is just from gut feeling of with whom I talked, I would say that 75% bring their own people. Like they have someone, like me, for instance, with Paige. I mean, we didn't hire someone externally, and yeah, but maybe that story was different because it was not like Paige was looking for someone to do this. It was more me hammering around and running around everywhere talking about my blockchain obsessions. It was more that. And I kind of I don't know, like pushed this development definitely. So I think that's actually what happens a lot in the Web2 world. There are like sometimes it's the CEO that really is interested in this, like with Zuckerberg and the metaverse hype. I mean, it really, I think, came from him mostly, or he was a very, like a CEO who really stepped up and said, okay, I want to focus on this. In most Web2 worlds, the C-levels are not aware of this, or maybe they heard Bitcoin and yeah, feel it's something fishy, scammy, I don't know. But there are like in the middle management, or maybe on a senior level position, there are people who are like digital or Web2 degens, or how to call them. So people who are really, really into this tech and they push for it and they push for some innovation hubs. So it's not like many C-levels sit down and say, oh, I think I should have an innovation hub. It does happen, definitely. But It's mostly a push from middle management from my experience, and then they hire them internally because there are like few people who see, okay, this could be a really cool career move for me. And that's what happened to me basically too. But I also met people or companies who did hire externally in the Web2 world, and they might have hired someone. I think a good example is actually from Sport 5. They hired someone really, really good with Web3 experience to push for their Web3 metaverse thing, who was also at Nike before and who also was in the Web3 world, like doing really cool things. So just to give an example, I think there are definitely cool stories like this. So, or I think also KPMG in Australia hired someone also with a very strong like Web3 past. Or also again our Anna Graf. I mean, she used to be, I think she was at the gallery in Berlin and doing NFT really focused work, and then got in touch with Avato and then made her career there. So it does happen that there are external hires for blockchain, definitely. It's just more, if I would say what's more often, I would say it's more this internal ambassadorship is what is definitely happening more often, which does make sense from a Web2 perspective because you're not risking anything. You know, the cultural fit is there, and you know that it's people who will also understand the culture of Web2, which is definitely different from Web3.
From your own experience while kind of creating the hub that you did right now with Michael Page, um, did you face some challenges internally?
No. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a mixture. I am really fortunate and lucky to have some really great fans in the organization for this. I'm really grateful every single day because they cheer for my LinkedIn posts or they, I don't know, just write me sometimes like, hey, I just want to write you. It's really so cool what you do. And I love to follow it and see how it develops and that you go also externally because it's something unusual for a recruitment agency to go that official into something or to push. Like sometimes I feel like I'm more in PR and marketing as well because it just requires a lot of marketing right now. But yeah, so that's definitely a lot of fanship there, and people were like, "Hey, we really value what you do and what you bring to our company. You make us, I don't know, it's kind of cool." But of course, there were challenges. I mean, challenges in terms of, for instance, that it's very, very different kind of work in terms of business development because the classical way of a recruitment agency in the old days when I started doing this, it's calling clients. You have the numbers in your database, or at least in my company, which is big, which is known, where we had a lot of contacts already. You have a big database and you update people, you can call them. And yeah, here with Web3, it's like 80% or 90% of the times I'm adding new companies to this database because they have never been inside there and it's really new. And so it's a whole different business development. It's also a lot more focused on this whole conference going. Like people are like, okay, I've never seen any recruiter go that much to any conference or speak up at conferences. So this is definitely also something that is more Web3. I mean, not that there are not Web2 conferences, but it's just in tech and IT in the 10 years, I probably went to 3 conferences in my whole career at Page because it was just not that I didn't care, but it's like you really looked at, okay, we have 1,000 IT consultants around the world at some point. We do calls every day. People know us. Yeah. So it's a different, totally different situation. And definitely what was also a challenge is this whole internationality because we are a super international company with 10,000 people around the world, but we usually operate locally because also in the tech world where I recruited, usually people had to be in Hamburg before COVID. Now it's more chilled, like you can be in Germany or somewhere like people don't care that much where you're living. But yeah, very often it was about also speaking the German language. This is definitely different in Berlin, which is much more international, but Hamburg is like so local in many respects. And yeah, Web3 is like, I don't know, we don't have offices. You can sit anywhere. That's like for business development, a very new thing for Page, I would say. So that was definitely also a challenge, like, okay, how can we do this? Or yeah, but it
Yeah.
works. So, I mean, yeah.
We have a question of another Jennifer right now. Hi, Anna. Any advice to get a Web3 job without a professional past in blockchain technology? It's a good
Yeah,
question.
yeah, very good question. Definitely. Well, I think what is good is really build your network because in the end, that's so important for jobs that people see you and your personality. Because if you're like when I started 1 year ago, it's almost exactly a year ago, I had nobody in my network because I was trading before as a private like retail investor and I was following people on Twitter, but I never interacted with anyone. I think in my private circles, there were two people interested in blockchain. So I knew no one. And then I just started going to events, first locally, then internationally. Of course, it depends a lot on are you an individual person? Is somebody paying for it or not? Because, of course, also financial resources can be limited with all these conferences, and not everybody can just go and hop around conferences. But that's why I would start with local events. Like if you're in Berlin or if you're in Hamburg or if you're maybe somewhere else in the world, just look, okay, who's around locally? With whom can you connect? The first people I connected with were in Berlin, yeah, or maybe also in Hamburg. And then I went to UCC Paris, and that was like so mind blowing for me, like how international this whole thing is and what kind of contacts you make there. So start local, I would say. But if there's an opportunity, maybe also through an organization like Women DAO or other women organizations, but it doesn't have to be women. It can also be a hackathon because very often there are sponsorships for hackathon that people support developers to go on a conference or maybe combine it with a holiday as well, just to get the opportunity to participate in a hackathon. Um, yeah, so these could be opportunities. Definitely go to events and try to connect with people in real life. You can also use LinkedIn, of course, or Twitter, since we're in crypto. If you're in marketing, I would rather say maybe even more LinkedIn nowadays. If you're in tech, definitely Twitter and Telegram. Um, but I personally think that this personal meeting is so important and it helps you to understand the cultures and maybe also for even if you're not a developer, going to a hackathon can be a very rewarding experience because they don't only look for developers, they also look for people with marketing background who can present well. Because if you present your tech to a jury, you might want to make sure that the story is engaging and it's not just about the tech. So they definitely also need people who can speak in front of others. And yeah, I think this is definitely rewarding. What also could be an advantage is looking for programs. There's not much formal education in here yet, but there's, for instance, the Frankfurt School that is doing a lot. They have this DLT program or management program, and I think this one is really good. It's like a mentorship program. I'm not sure how many weeks. I think it was 10 or 12. Correct me on that. I'm not the expert on it, but I really hear good things. And you are also part of a network then. And being part of a network is really worth it. Like I guess at some point I got so many speaker engagements from my network also, or people saw things and then they were like, okay, I really, and that person knows her. And, you know, it's a lot of networking actually. So I would say,
Mm.
if you want a job in Web3 and you don't have a career yet, try it for networking, getting yourself out there. Yeah.
Um, but the one question I would also like to elaborate on, are companies actually looking for a professional past, or is it more because I think like a lot of people also dived into the topic during COVID, right? Because of the big hype and the boom. But this doesn't mean you can have 2 years of knowledge in the industry without having the professional background. So how
Mhm.
important is it actually, or is the ecosystem, are the companies
Mhm.
kind of open to talk to you even though you have no professional background?
It totally depends on the role and the company because if I look at, for instance, some of the foundations I talk to, they employ people without prior blockchain knowledge, depending on how important is this other knowledge to them. For instance, if you're, it depends like what the goal is. If you want to reach out more to yeah, like let's say you want more enterprise adoption, then maybe for you it's not that important to employ a BD person who knows blockchain in and out, but it's more important, okay, does that person have enterprise contacts or something like that? So this could be an issue. Yeah, like definitely depends on the goals, I would say. Let me think. How else would I answer this? No, yeah, I think it really depends.
Yeah. Okay, let's carry on with a question by Marcus. How are Web3 activities our projects distributed in terms of company size and type? Are, for example, Mittelstand and smaller companies also active? Or is this, so mid-size or smaller companies, are they active? Or is this currently primarily a topic of large companies and brands? Let's
Mhm.
start with that question.
Yeah. Okay. I think it depends if you look at Web 2, Web 3 companies, or if you look at Web 3 native ones, because Web 3 native ones, because of the youth of the industry, are mostly small, medium-sized ones. It's definitely like I even have a statistic on that. Just let me check. Company size of professionals in blockchain, less than 10 people is 25% of the people that we asked, the 1,000 people that we asked in the beginning of the year. 10 to 50 people was 35% of the respondents. 22% were between 50 and 250, and I think 19% or like 20% were be like above 250. So it's really more small, medium-sized sector. But of course, if we look at the Web 2 related Web 3 employments, I would rather say it's the bigger ones. Like if you look at the Fortune 5, not 500, 100 brands, I would say that 75% of them have either plans to go into Web 3 and I have some trial thing going, or they actually have already bigger groups there and organizations. I was impressed by Ernst& Young, for instance. I think um, several hundred people. I think they have just 150 developers, blockchain developers working for them. I mean, of course, if you look into the grand scheme of things, it's not that big compared to how big Ernst& Young is, but it's big in terms of, like how many, yeah, teams can say they have like 150 blockchain developers. It's huge, I would say. So I think in Web3 native land, it's definitely small and medium sized. And in the Web2 realm, it's more the bigger ones, also from the investment perspective. But I think there will be an emergence of Web 2.5 companies that are small and medium sized. And yeah, I think that is definitely something that is coming up.
Hmm. I mean, maybe just to add what we can see, like we are doing this Web3 study in Germany right now, right? And what we can see is that both sides, like more like the extremes, are really working in Web3. It's more like these hidden champions or the mid-sized companies are a little bit more careful.
Mhm.
But the startups, of course, and the big ones also have their projects. So it's more like the outer, from our experience. But there's another question, or there are a couple of more questions by Marcos. So continue. And in which status are the projects? Are they rather POCs, research, or already concrete plans and products?
Mhm. Yeah, I think, I mean, you see PayPal today announcing their stablecoin thing. Obviously, they were already doing it. I think the person who's leading that started in August 2 years ago. So during the heat of the bull market, but they've been building apparently the whole time. So I would say definitely that's an example of someone having very specific plans. And I think there were some attempts. I mean, we all saw the meta experiments, and we also saw like different other ones. Really, I think also in high fashion. I mean, there are many projects. I think this whole Louis Vuitton brand did a lot, or is still doing a lot there. Or if you look at Adidas, who have a Web3 studio, Salesforce has a Web3 studio. So definitely that's very specific. But it's also a lot are still like searching for their product or what they want to do exactly. And it's more like, yeah, or MasterCard. I was just thinking also, MasterCard is definitely doing on NFT level as well as on the financial side. I'm not aware of every detailed project, of course, and everything happening simply because it's just so much that is happening all the time. But yeah, I would definitely say that most are using the time to build right now. And yeah, it's hard to find any leading corporation that is not kind of thinking about it. I just think you need to have a look at it into the grand scheme of things. Like sometimes people are like, oh wow, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, or whoever of the famous brands is entering Web3, and wow, it's a groundbreaking thing. But the reality is, of course, that these corporations very often have like 50,000 people working for them. And yeah, then they have a team of, I don't know, between 5 to 300 people also in blockchain. So yeah, it's a big move, and I would never underestimate that. And we have to start somewhere. It's super young, but at the same time, it doesn't mean the whole company moves into it, and that the CEOs are much aware of it. Some CEOs are. I think I heard the Mastercard CEO talking a lot about their blockchain activities, but also sometimes it's really like, yeah, it's still so little of. I think this will change once blockchain related use cases will produce more revenue, because now the word of the hour is more runway and not revenue. And yeah, so it's still an investment case for most. Okay, sorry, long answer, but and I think there are also, you asked some more questions here. What types of solutions are most in demand? Smart contracts, on-chain logic, NFT specifically, DeFi, etc. Well, based uh, on feedback from candidates who are often sometimes also employers or who are also working somewhere. DeFi is definitely something that is gaining a lot of attention. I was actually surprised myself how much more attention DeFi gets in terms of where people are interested to work in. I mean, I love DeFi, don't get it wrong, but I was like, wow, it's like the DeFi was really it's so high in demand compared to everything else. So I was just like, wow, okay, somehow people are really a lot into the DeFi sector. NFTs too, but I think NFTs had their hype moment, hype time in the last 1.5 years up until the last months, because right now, if you look at NFT sector, it's definitely, yeah, I mean, it's developing, it's moving a lot, but it's definitely not that hype that used to be there. But I think NFTs were an important onboarding moment for many people, specifically from marketing and sales, because developers, of course, I mean, they're not that much into NFTs because, I mean, it's not really compared to other things you can do. It's not really the most challenging things for a developer, I would say. But for marketing and salespeople, that was definitely a big onboarding moment. And I think it's very helpful now if these people stay in the blockchain world and maybe go to promote ZK tech or some other topics or decentralized identity, something that WorldCoin is working on and like many others are working on. This is definitely interesting one. Yeah.
Are there certain sectors that stand out here with Web3 activities?
Yeah, I would say luxury brands. I mean, if it's really about Web3 activities, it's definitely something that has gotten some traction. I think maybe it's also this thing that you see. Okay, your competitors are doing it, and then everybody joins, and it's definitely well received in the luxury brand or in general the brand sector. I would say when it comes to fashion. I would also say financial services because I mean they were the earliest to realize the potential. I mean, of course, it's kind of like a very interesting relationship because blockchain is kind of a threat to it, but it's also like okay, we should be early to this because it might threaten certain of our operations. So they do try to adjust a lot and really to incorporate it a lot. I mean, see the PayPal situation. I mean, I think that's like the perfect example. Sorry for referring all the time to it, but it's like a big news of the day actually. And yeah, I think that's definitely like financial services and fashion. There are always different industries. Like, I mean, there's also, of course, the identity stuff gaining traction now. There's also supply chain things. But I think while the potential is super high for supply chain, maybe there are, I don't know, like it's just more people focusing on financial services. Maybe it's just more, yeah, maybe more people in the financial services industry sector are informed about this than the supply chain. So I would say that's why there are not
Mm.
like I don't hear of many supply chain initiatives, but that might be wrong. I mean, there's so much happening.
Used to
So
used to be big, yeah. 2017 and 18 supply chain was
yeah.
all over it.
Oh, definitely. I mean, if you look at it, what we had, I think, I mean, of course, with yeah, like there were projects, and it's still, as I said, it's a huge potential sector. I mean, of particularly for NFTs, um, I think it's just yeah, maybe I feel like um, maybe supply chain is just also a bit more reserved in terms of adopting something like this because for supply chain would be a huge adaptation. So I don't know. Like it's just a
Mm.
personal opinion. Might be wrong.
How easy would you say is it for a person working in Web3 already to move between industries?
You mean if you're in Web3 to move back into Web2 or
No, no,
to
no.
move
I mean,
within
actually,
Web3?
for example, from fashion to finance or
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah. I think that works. Well, it definitely works because we still have a shortage of really super good talent. And it's not like you, I mean, of course, from a recruitment agency, people do sometimes expect, like, okay, you should have prior knowledge, not just in blockchain, but maybe also in our specific field. Like, you should come from the luxury brand because we need some of this experience. But I think there are definitely movements also when it's like across sectors, I would say. It's just again what you expect, like from us, of course, with the fees that we charge, people do expect maybe a bit more, like, okay, it has to be on point if I have to pay a fee here. If somebody applies directly, it's maybe less of an issue, I would say.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a question from Pedro. He's asking, what do you think about Hyperledger Fabric specifically?
Yeah, it's a good question. To be very honest, I didn't think that much about it. Like really, it's not on my first thoughts. I mean, it's you're referring to the open source modular project, right? From the Linux Foundation for
Linux.
Enterprises, right? I assume. I
Yeah.
really have not much knowledge on that, so that's why I would say I don't have that many thoughts or a strong opinion on that. But you definitely got my interest here, and I'll definitely look into it to see if I can develop a strong opinion on that. And maybe I'll just write down your name and then get back to you once I have a strong opinion.
Nice. So let's skip to the next
Oh, by the way, I
question.
think, sorry, Tom, I think 5 or 6 questions before you asked me something, and then I had a thought, but I forgot it. I think it was about, do people really need blockchain industry experience, right? Like if they want to
Yeah,
enter onto the aspect.
exactly.
Yeah, because just to add on that, because now I remembered my thought. Um, I would say that it depends. I know a lot of foundations, and I mentioned that hire without this prior knowledge. But sometimes for like leading roles, for instance, the CMO role I just posted like 3 days ago on LinkedIn. I received like 5 calls right after it from people who mostly said, "Hey, I really love blockchain. I don't have any experience, but I would love to." And in the requirements, I wrote that it's mandatory to have this experience. So in this case, it really is mandatory because the company said, okay, we try to move people without blockchain experience, but it's really hard. They don't understand the community. They come from totally different backgrounds. And we just made this experience that it doesn't work. We need someone from really blockchain. And that's why sometimes it is mandatory. But if you're not yet working for a blockchain company, what you can definitely do is yeah, do some maybe even free of charge projects to start with to just get this experience out, to get a brand name ideally, and say, okay, I did something small at least for this blockchain company. And maybe over that also get some connections. That could be definitely something. So yes, you can definitely gain a job in Web3 and blockchain without prior blockchain experience. But particularly, as I also said right now, from us, of course, people do expect, like, okay, if I go for a recruiter, I definitely often expect that as a base layer because, yeah, we want industry experts from us. Yeah,
But even if you don't have the job experience, joining the Blockchain Monday every week is a very good thing.
super important.
Okay, we have another question by an anonymous guy. Which country or countries are the most active markets in European Union right now? And how active big corporates do recruit such roles? Web3 based companies might look for people in Web3, obviously, but how eager is the worldwide brands?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in the EU, I mean, most of Web3 is very decentralized, so it really doesn't matter that much where you or which country you're in. But I do get the question that, like, where are the requirements and how is the feeling towards crypto and blockchain? And definitely, I would say within the EU, France is definitely standing out to me. Like, it's incredible how much France is doing, and also how politicians in France are pushing this sector. yeah, like if I would have to name a country in the EU where I would say, okay, they're really pushing for it, it's definitely France and specifically Paris, of course, because it's very like centralized compared to, let's say, Germany, which is very federal historically. And in Paris, I mean, if you look at the scale, magnitude, and like quality of the events that are happening there, I've been to Paris in the last 6 months 4 times. And I mean, I do travel a lot, but Paris is definitely like my go-to destination simply because I mean, many like leading exchanges are building their Web3 Europe offices in Paris, like crypto.com. I think Binance used to have that. I'm not sure if they still have it. I think so, yeah. But definitely was a lot of movement. Like also Ledger is kind of more situated in Paris. Many startups as well. I mean, there's a very vibrant scene there, and also the like ministries. As I said, I mean, I saw one of the ministers from France. I think it was the culture minister. I'm not sure, but she visited the NFT factory in Paris, which is kind of like an interesting moment, like for a politician to come in and say, okay, what is this whole NFT factory thing about? Um, yeah, or I think also at certain events, I mean, you definitely have the top leadership, Minister of Digitalization joining. So that's pretty cool. Like it's really supported from the top. London is emerging as well. But to be honest, I'm much less often in London right now, but I'm hey, looking forward to if there are nice conferences. I'll be happy to join, of course. And I think many countries are doing something. Like EU is definitely, thanks to Mika, a very open to crypto situation, like area compared to the US currently. Um, but of course, there are also other hubs around the world. Like I would say Japan is an interesting one actually, outside of the EU, or Hong Kong. Also, of course, Singapore to a certain extent. Definitely also the Dubai and of course the general like area around that place is definitely investing a lot into this whole thing. But yeah, I was amazed to see really Japan standing out recently because just to give an example, Japan didn't allow any international stable coins up until January, and now Circle is planning to do something big there. And there was a big conference last month where the Prime Minister of Japan actually spoke. So yeah, sometimes it can move very fast. And yeah, for Germany, I would say we are open to it. We have some startups and everything, but I would say France takes the lead. So inside the EU, it's definitely from my point of view. And of course, Lisbon
Yeah.
is also very. Sorry, I forgot Lisbon. It's a very very crypto friendly regulation. Liechtenstein also very positive, but maybe smaller. But Lisbon definitely. France, Lisbon, like Paris, Lisbon, probably London. Well, not really EU, but anyways.
Do you know about some special regulation that happens in Paris, or is it more about the whole network and the ecosystem there?
I think it's a network and ecosystem. I'm not an expert on certain aspects
Yeah.
there. Like I'm really, you can't be everywhere and in all detail, but it's just, yeah. I mean, the high caliber events like Paris Blockchain Week is there. I also was talking at Proof of Talk, which is a nice new event. There's NFT Paris, which was like such high caliber speakers. It was really a fight for places because there were 10,000 attendees and only 200 places to sit for the speeches. And yeah, that was, like you saw the demand, and maybe it's also Paris as the city. It kind of reminds me, not that I lived in that time, but 1920s Paris, like intellectuals and people gathering and like talking about new tech and like, yeah, it's a bit like that vibe, I think. But I'm
Nice.
trying to see. There were more questions here.
There's
Um,
there's another let's talk numbers.
mhm.
How much do wages differ from similar roles or competencies in Web2 environment compared to Web3?
Yeah,
So what from
wait.
your experience?
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So of course, it's very difficult always to talk about wages in Web3 or Web3 related stuff because there are so many differences. Because even though we're a global economy, I would say there's no global standard because cost of living in the US are just different than in Vietnam or in Germany. And like while some people say it doesn't matter where you live, we will pay the same salary to make it fair. There are many others who also say, okay, it has to be fair fairly adjusted to the local situation in terms of, okay, if you're living in New York and have the cost of New York, you can't pay the same, like if you have someone in Vietnam, you can't pay the same salary as in New York because maybe the living costs are just different. But of course, there are like diverse top like opinions on that. And in terms of Web 2 and Web 3, I would say that many Web 2 corporates pay less, to be honest, on average. But I wouldn't say it's a general thing because in Web3, there are very high wages possible. Like if you have some Web3 native protocol that is very maybe American oriented in terms of the founders are from America, maybe used to American numbers, it can go up and like and be something depending on the role between 200 and like 700K base and then tokens and stuff like that. But of course, like the higher up, it's really like the top 1% as well. It's not like everybody gets the salary. But in terms of Web 2 environment, definitely in Europe, at least what I see is lower wages than the Web 3 component, simply because you also have different risk levels. I mean, if you work for a corporation Web 2, I mean, first of all, you're also part of this Web 2 world. So they can't just triple your pay compared to other Web 2 people, even like if they're not in blockchain, but it would seem unfair in the context of this corporation maybe. So that's why they usually wouldn't just double or triple your salary or maybe increase it by 1/3 or something. Yeah, simply because it's really tough to manage otherwise. So Web 2 environments are paying lower than Web 3, let's say unicorns. Also, not all Web3 companies pay well because if they didn't get good funding, I mean, also somebody approached me like, hey, do you know, I would love to have a co-founder and first developers for my Web3 project. And ideally they work for free because I don't have money yet to pay. So this is also a reality of Web3. But I would say unicorns or high caliber projects in Web3 pay better than the Web2 counterparts, but they are also much more risky in terms of employment situation, also holidays or things like that. I mean, depending on where you're from, but in Europe, you usually have somewhere between 25 days of holidays, 30 days, maybe a bit more than 30. Yeah, and Web3, most people I talked to, I mean, I have some outliers who really take a lot of vacation, but most people are so also into it that they hardly take vacation and maybe like a week or so, which is more American standard. Yeah.
Hmm. Nice. Anna, maybe to because we're closing, we're very close to the end. It's nearly 8 p.m. In Germany now. Um, Maybe just to finish this up, what do you expect from the Web3 hiring procedures, or like more like the Web3 industry, the development in the next years? What do you expect from the development? How do you believe the hiring process will change, adapt maybe as well? And the whole market, like, should people go into Web3 now and learn about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to learn about it, even though AI currently has maybe more of a mainstream focus. But I think it's always good to focus on something when not everybody else is focusing on it. So, of course, you can use momentum, but you can also use the shadow that Web3 currently is compared to AI and just broaden your network here and broaden your knowledge. I think it's a good time because usually, I mean, the builders are there in the bear market and it's much safer to find good employment now in terms of, I mean, like scam projects, they exist all the time, but there will be less scam projects in the bear market simply because there's less money on the tables. So the ones that are actually building right now, it's much more legit and you can make yourself a name. I mean, those people who are like really high profile individuals in this industry, they usually started maybe, I don't know, at Consensus in 2016 or something like that. So it was even before like last time's bear market. Yeah, and I think to stick through it is really a sign of commitment that you also prove that you're not here for the short run and not just here to make a quick buck because you heard salaries could be good. Actually, it's really good to make some really good connections and network. And yeah, what do I expect from Web3 in the next months or years? I hope that some hiring parts will become more serious because like I heard, for instance, I mean, it can happen somewhere else too, but I thought it's kind of funny. Like we always say community is so important for us in Web3, but then I heard that people got fired from a certain company, and the way they got the information was because they couldn't log on to their system anymore, and that was their yeah, like firing procedure. And I think this is very weird for an industry that focuses on community and says, hey, we're here together in this thing. So I hope that we'll professionalize a bit. I mean, I do love this Degen style thing, but yeah, maybe it's really, really good to, yeah, have a bit of certain procedures, at least for hiring and firing, and maybe also development of people in between, and maybe also intercultural management, because there are definitely challenges when you work across continents, time zones, and different mentalities. I'm pretty sure there is enough, yeah, room to grow on that.
Beautiful. We just have a last statement by Nabil. A turning point has always been a source of great concern and great opportunities in the history of humanity. In Web 3.0, possibilities will arise that we cannot yet fathom, both positive and negative.
I think that's a perfect closing because that's actually how it is. I absolutely agree with you, Nabil. Thanks for sharing that.
Nice. Yeah, thank you first of all for your time, Anna. Thank you for sharing all your insights, and thanks to all of you for all the great questions. I hope we
Yeah,
can do
thank you
this
guys.
again at one point.
Yeah, and feel free to follow me on LinkedIn because I'll be posting more and more insights in recruitment, Web3 in the next weeks. So happy to connect. And if you have further questions, also feel free to reach out. Thank you guys for being such an awesome Q&A group.
Nice. And follow us as well as the Hansa Blockchain Institute. Next Monday, we will be here again on Zoom. And we will talk about NFT whiskies this time with Emma
Mm,
Island.
yeah, cool. Looking forward to that.
Nice. So have a good night, everybody.
Okay, cool. Have a good
Bye
night,
bye.
everyone. Bye bye.